a heartbroken widower made his way to his late wife's grave, who tragically died while 8 months pregnant. As he approached her resting place in the cemetery, an astounding revelation awaited him. What sinister truths would come to light regarding his wife's enigmatic demise, and how could this possibly be, given she lay interred right below the surface? On that somber Saturday morning, a thick fog blanketed the Virginia cemetery, with the sun struggling to pierce through the gloom. Jordan drove into the almost deserted lot, the soft hum of his car's engine breaking the morning's calm. Glancing at his watch, he noted it was precisely 1 month since Sherry's funeral. The gravity of this milestone weighed down on him as he exited his car. Jordan, 35, paused to absorb the melancholic scene, endless rows of granite and marble, a silent homage to lives once lived. The moist grass whispered underfoot as he made his way to his car's trunk, retrieving his usual supplies, a metal watering can, full to the top, and fresh flowers encased in green tissue. His steps, burdened by the weight of the water, were measured as he moved past the tombstones. He had taken this path every Saturday since Sherry's memorial, but today the journey felt more burdensome, with the 1-month anniversary casting a shadow over him. As he walked, shrouded in mist, memories of Sherry flooded his mind. Her laughter, the sparkle in her eyes when she smiled, the thrill in her voice discussing their future baby. The raw pain of her absence was a relentless ache in his heart, unyielding and deep. He recalled the elation when they discovered they were expecting. Sherry, bursting into their room with a pregnancy test, her face radiant with happiness. They had spent the entire night envisioning their child's future, from choosing names to decorating the nursery. Now, those dreams were crushed, lying 6 feet underground alongside his beloved. His reverie was shattered when he noticed a woman's silhouette near Sherry's grave. She bore an uncanny resemblance to Sherry, even dressed similarly in flowing garments. His heart skipped a beat, torn between hope and disbelief. "Hello!" Jordan's voice cut through the silence, but the figure vanished so swiftly, he doubted his own eyes. Was it a figment of his grief-stricken imagination? Blinking hard, Jordan tried to dispel both the mist and his confusion. He remained frozen, torn between chasing the apparition and accepting the harsh reality. Sherry was no more. With a heavy heart, he resumed his walk to Sherry's grave. His hands shook as he laid down his tools and began to care for the site, clearing away the mist and debris from her marker, Sherry L. William. As he watered the parched earth, sprouts of wild grass peeking through, Jordan spoke to Sherry. "Hey, sweetheart, it's been a month. I miss you both so much." His voice faltered as he reminisced about preparing their nursery, the joy of their expected arrival. "The nursery is still as we left it. Sometimes I sit there in the rocking chair, imagining what might have been," he continued, his voice thick with emotion. He remembered their light-hearted debates over the nursery's color scheme, her preference for yellow's cheerfulness against his choice of soothing green, which eventually led to a gentle mint compromise that remained untouched. A painful memory resurfaced, the denial of a final farewell at her rushed funeral, with her family barring him from a last glimpse as he arrived from the airport. "I wish I could have seen you one last time," Jordan murmured, tracing the outline of Sherry's face in a treasured photo, the unresolved questions about her hurried burial lingering painfully in his heart. "Your family. They denied me that chance. I still don't understand their haste or their insistence on keeping me from our final goodbye." Jordan lingered in silence for a moment, absorbing the faint rustling of leaves and the distant chirping of birds. The serene calm of the cemetery starkly contrasted the chaos swirling within him. He reached out, his fingers brushing the cold, unyielding stone of the headstone. "I keep spotting you everywhere, whether at the grocery store or our favorite coffee shop. Sometimes, I swear I hear your voice amid a crowd. Is this normal, or am I losing my mind?" he wondered aloud. His gaze shifted back to the place where he had seen the enigmatic figure earlier. "Today, for a split second, I thought it was you. I know it seems impossible, but she resembled you so much. Maybe I'm just clutching at straws, hoping somehow you're still here." He sighed deeply, a hand running through his hair in frustration. "I hope you and our little one are at peace, watching over me," Jordan voiced out, a resolve firming in his voice. "I'll keep visiting every week, that's a promise." As Jordan finished up at the grave, the image of the woman he had seen lingered in his mind. It felt so tangible, so familiar, yet it couldn't be, could it? He tried to convince himself it was merely a trick of the light, a grief-induced illusion. Still, a tiny spark of hope flickered within him, a faint glimmer amidst the overwhelming grief. With a deep exhale, Jordan stood, picking up his empty watering can. He cast one last glance at Sherry's grave, where the fresh flowers added a splash of color against the grey stone. Approaching the headstone to leave a kiss, his attention was caught by the photo embedded within. The image had deteriorated more than he had realized, its colors faded and washed out by relentless sun and rain. A frown marred his face as he realized the urgency of preserving her memory. "I'll get this fixed, sweetheart," he murmured, making a mental note to stop by the nearby print shop before heading home. "I'll be back soon with a new photo." "I love you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Turning to leave, Jordan's heart felt as heavy as his steps on the damp grass. He couldn't resist a final glance over his shoulder, half expecting to see the mysterious figure again. But the cemetery remained silent and still, offering no clues or comfort for his tormented thoughts. The drive to the print shop was short, giving Jordan some time to reflect on the day's surreal experiences. He couldn't shake the feeling that something about Sherry's death didn't add up, that there was more to uncover. But where would he even begin to unravel such a mystery? The print shop was a buzz of activity, a sharp contrast to the cemetery's quiet. Jordan felt slightly out of place amid the lively chatter as he queued to print a new memorial photo. As he waited, he scrolled through his phone, revisiting photos of Sherry, images from their first date, their wedding, the day they learned they were expecting. He scrutinized the faces of Sherry's friends and family in the background, searching for any resemblance to the woman he saw at the grave. "Next, please," the clerk called, pulling Jordan from his reverie. He approached the counter, still preoccupied. "I need to print a photo for a grave marker," he told the clerk, his voice subdued. The clerk nodded understandingly. "Of course, sir. Do you have the photo selected?" Jordan hesitated before selecting a photo from their last vacation, where Sherry looked radiant with happiness. "This one," he said, handing over his phone. As the clerk processed his order, Jordan settled onto a corner bench, his mind still occupied with the image of the woman at the grave. Time seemed to stretch endlessly as he waited, barely noticing the other customers with their own narratives of loss and remembrance. "Mr. Williams," the clerk's voice eventually broke through his contemplation. Jordan, realizing he had been called multiple times, felt a flush of embarrassment as he walked back to the counter. The photo had been printed and framed, ready for collection. Jordan inspected it, a lump forming in his throat as he saw Sherry's smiling face captured perfectly. "Sorry about that," he managed, his voice catching. "It's perfect, thank you." As he prepared to leave, a sudden insight struck him, prompting him to pause. Perhaps there was a way to connect the mysterious sighting at the grave with something more tangible. Jordan paused as he noticed a woman entering the shop, her build and hair color strikingly reminiscent of Sherry's. His heart skipped a beat, wondering if it could possibly be the same woman he had seen at the cemetery. However, as she turned, his fleeting hope dissipated. Although she bore a resemblance, she was clearly not Sherry, nor the mysterious figure he had glimpsed. Shaking his head at his own wishful thinking, Jordan left the print shop with a new photo securely tucked under his arm. The world seemed a touch brighter now, with Sherry's smile serving as a small beacon of warmth in his otherwise grief-shadowed life. Driving back to the cemetery, Jordan noticed it was busier than before, with more visitors and a funeral procession in the distance. The morning solitude had shifted to a soft chorus of mourning, a reminder that his personal tragedy was part of a universal cycle of life and death. He parked his car and walked back to Sherry's grave, the new photo clutched in his hands. With each step, a mix of anticipation and dread filled him. Part of him hoped to encounter the mysterious woman again, while another part braced for the disappointment of her absence. As he neared Sherry's grave, his heart pounded audibly in his ears. However, he halted abruptly, his body freezing at the sight before him. Atop Sherry's grave lay a white infant, swaddled carefully in a blanket. Disbelief gripped Jordan. He blinked hard, half expecting the vision to vanish. But when he opened his eyes, the baby was still there, real and vulnerable against the cold stone. Approaching cautiously, his legs weak beneath him, Jordan observed the baby's features. Blonde hair and striking blue eyes that mirrored Sherry's own. The resemblance was uncanny, almost beyond belief. His mind raced with questions. Sherry had died while still pregnant, and he had the hospital documents, handed to him by her father after the funeral, to prove it. Yet, the baby appeared to be about 1 month old, aligning perfectly with Sherry's due date. "This can't be real," Jordan whispered, his voice trembling with the impossibility of the situation. He scanned the area for any clue about who might have left the infant, but the cemetery was quiet except for distant workers. The baby stirred, cooing softly, the sound tugging at Jordan's heart. Torn between confusion and an overwhelming protective instinct, Jordan gently lifted the baby. The child felt warm and solid, undeniably real, as he cradled it. Emotions swirled within him. Grief, hope, fear, and love all tangled together. "Hey there, little one," he said softly, his voice cracking. "Where did you come from?" The baby blinked, those familiar blue eyes seeming to hold endless secrets. As Jordan held the child, trying to make sense of the situation, a myriad of questions flooded his mind. How did this baby arrive here? Who left it? And most crucially, could this child actually be his and Sherry's? Logically, it seemed impossible. Sherry had died before giving birth. He had seen her body, attended her funeral. Yet, a part of him, the part fueled by the recent mysterious sightings, dared to hope that there was more to this story. Jordan looked down at the baby again, studying its features closely. The resemblance to Sherry was undeniable. The eyes, the nose, even the tiny chin dimple. It was like looking at a miniature version of his wife. "What am I going to do with you?" he murmured, gently stroking the baby's cheek. He knew he couldn't leave the infant alone in the cemetery. The heat was rising, and the child needed proper care. But what were his options? He couldn't just take a baby home without explanation. He needed help, he needed answers. Realizing he needed guidance, Jordan decided to seek out the cemetery caretaker. Holding the baby carefully, he walked to the far side of the cemetery where he often saw the old man working. He found the elderly caretaker tending to a flower bed, his hands gently pruning roses. "Excuse me," Jordan said, his voice urgent. "I found this baby on my wife's grave. Have you seen anyone leave a child here?" The caretaker looked up, his response cryptic and poetic. "Heaven's doors have been open this week, young man. Souls might slip back through. You never know." Jordan frowned, unsure how to interpret the old man's words. "What do you mean? Have you seen anything unusual?" The caretaker shrugged, his eyes twinkling with a mysterious light. "We've had multiple deaths this week. The cemetery's been crowded. Can't be sure if anyone left a baby, but stranger things have happened in this place. Frustrated by the lack of a clear answer, Jordan thanked the caretaker and walked away, the baby still nestled in his arms. As he made his way back to his car, Jordan's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. The impossibility of the situation wrestled with the undeniable reality of the child in his arms. He looked down at the baby, who had fallen asleep, peaceful and trusting. Jordan reached his car and carefully opened the door, realizing with a start that he had no car seat, no supplies, nothing needed to safely transport an infant. The gravity of the situation hit him full force. Standing there, holding the baby, Jordan felt more lost and overwhelmed than he had since Sherry's death. But as he looked at the child's face, so reminiscent of his late wife, a surge of determination filled him. "Okay, little one," he said softly. "I don't know who you are or where you came from, but I'm going to figure this out." Jordan looked at them, his eyes filled with a mix of resolve and anxiety. "I need to go to the hospital where Sherry was declared dead. I have to see the records myself, speak to the doctors. Something doesn't add up. This baby," he gestured to the infant now quietly cooing in Lionel's arms, "he's proof that there's more to the story. Maybe Sherry wasn't really dead, or something else happened that we don't understand." Tommy's expression was serious, tinged with concern. "Jordan, you're walking into potentially complicated territory. If what you're suggesting is true, you might uncover things that are hard to face. Are you prepared for that?" Jordan nodded, his jaw set. "I have to know the truth, Tommy, no matter what it is. Sherry deserves that much, and so does this little guy." He glanced at the baby, a tender smile briefly crossing his face before it was replaced by a steely determination. Lionel handed the baby back to Jordan, her face sympathetic. "We'll support you however we can, Jordan. Just be careful. We don't know what you might find. Thank you, both of you." "I can't tell you how much this means to me," Jordan said, his voice thick with emotion. He looked down at the baby, who gazed back with wide, innocent eyes. "Let's get some answers." With the baby securely in his arms, Jordan left the clinic, his steps purposeful. As he drove towards the hospital, his mind raced with possibilities and whats. The drive seemed shorter this time, each mile bringing him closer to a truth he was both eager and fearful to discover. Upon reaching the hospital, Jordan approached the reception desk, his expression one of a man on a mission. "I need to see the records for Sherry Williams," he stated firmly to the receptionist, who looked taken aback by his intense demeanor. "I'm sorry, sir, but patient records are confidential. You would need to be next of kin or have appropriate authorization," the receptionist replied, adhering to protocol. Jordan's frustration mounted. "I am her husband." "Here," he said, pulling out his ID and their marriage certificate, which he had started carrying with him. "Please, it's extremely important." The receptionist hesitated, then nodded, taking the documents to verify. After a few moments, she returned. "I'll have someone from our records department meet with you, Mr. Williams." A hospital administrator escorted Jordan to a private room where they could discuss the matter confidentially. "Mr. Williams, I understand you want to see your wife's records. Can I ask the reason for your request?" Jordan explained his situation as concisely as he could, the administrator listening with a growing look of bewilderment. "This is highly unusual, Mr. Williams. However, given the circumstances, I'll allow you to view the records under supervision." As they walked through the corridors towards the records room, Jordan felt every step he took was leading him deeper into a labyrinth of potential secrets. Once inside, he was shown the records pertaining to Sherry's death. He scanned through them, looking for anything that might indicate a mistake or foul play. Everything seemed in order, yet nothing made sense. The dates, the signatures of the doctors, the cause of death, All pointed to a reality that Jordan could no longer accept without question. He thanked the administrator and left the hospital, the records etched into his mind. Back in his car, Jordan placed the baby in a makeshift seat he had improvised. He looked at the small face, so like Sherry's, and his resolve hardened. "We're not done yet," he whispered to the baby. "We're going to find out everything." As he drove away from the hospital, Jordan's thoughts turned to his next steps. He needed to talk to Sherry's parents, confront them about the funeral, and ask what they knew. It was going to be one of the hardest things he had ever done, but with the truth so close within his grasp, he couldn't turn back now. Lionel nodded, her expression warm yet worried. "Just remember, Jordan, whatever you do, keep him safe. If you need anything else, or just someone to talk to, we're here." Jordan thanked her once more, and, with the baby carefully secured in his arms and the bag of supplies slung over his shoulder, he left the clinic. His car seemed too cold and impersonal for the warmth of the life he now held, but he made do, padding the seat with soft swaddles to create a makeshift baby carrier. As he drove back towards the cemetery, his mind was a storm of thoughts. The frustration at the police station, the baffling encounter with the detective, and the concrete reality of his son's existence despite the supposed death of Sherry, all of it gnawed at him. The image of the woman he'd seen at the grave, his ongoing encounters, the DNA test, all these pieces had to mean something. Arriving back at the cemetery, Jordan's gaze was intense and focused. He wasn't just a grieving husband anymore. He was a man on a mission, determined to unearth whatever truth was buried along with the misconceptions surrounding his wife's death. The cemetery was quieter now. The earlier bustle of visitors diminished as the sun began to set. Jordan approached a group of groundskeepers who were finishing up their work for the day. "Excuse me," he called out, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside him. "I was wondering if any of you were working here about a month ago when my wife, Sherry Williams, was buried." A couple of the workers nodded, eyeing him curiously. Jordan continued, "Did anything unusual happen around that time? Any strange occurrences, or anything out of the ordinary?" The workers exchanged glances, and one of them, an older man with a weathered face, stepped forward. "You're the husband, right?" There was talk back then. Odd things. Some said they saw lights late at night around her grave, but we chalked it up to folks with too much imagination. Jordan's heart raced. Lights? Did anyone investigate this? "Nah," the man shrugged. "Happens sometimes. People come to visit their loved ones at all hours, or maybe some kids fooling around. Didn't seem important. But it was unusual." Jordan pressed. The man nodded. "Yeah, I suppose. Not normal, but not unheard of either. This place has its share of stories." Thanking the workers, Jordan walked towards Sherry's grave, his son cradled against his chest. The baby seemed peaceful, oblivious to the storm of activity around him. As Jordan stood by the grave, the gravity of the situation hit him anew. He looked down at his son, the living, breathing proof that not all was as it seemed. He whispered to the baby, "We're going to figure this out, for Mom. For us." Jordan spent the next hours at the cemetery, walking and pondering his next moves. As darkness fell, a chilling breeze swept through the trees, but it did nothing to cool the fire of determination burning within him. Finally, Jordan decided his next step would be to confront Sherry's parents directly. They had arranged the funeral, been in charge of everything. They might know something about the rushed proceedings, why no one had been allowed to see Sherry at the end, or why her grave had attracted nocturnal visitors. With a plan forming, Jordan left the cemetery, feeling a mix of apprehension and determination. He knew the conversation with Sherry's parents would be difficult, possibly confrontational. Yet he needed answers, and he was willing to face whatever challenges that brought. As he drove away, the cemetery receded into the background, but the mysteries it held loomed larger than ever in his mind. Jordan knew the road ahead would be tough, but for his son, for Sherry, he was ready to face whatever truths awaited him. The quest for answers was just beginning, and Jordan was prepared to unravel the tangled web of secrets, no matter the cost. Calculated. If Sherry really is alive, why go through all this deception? It's not like them at all. Jordan sighed, his gaze never leaving the road. I know, Mom. Nothing makes sense. Maybe they didn't know either. Maybe, he trailed off, unable to formulate a theory that fit all the bizarre pieces together. Sharon nodded thoughtfully. Or maybe they were protecting her, or you, from something even we can't see yet. We need to keep an open mind until we get all the facts. As they neared the next town, Jordan pulled off the highway into a large retail complex to purchase a car seat. The store was brightly lit and bustling with evening shoppers. Jordan quickly found what they needed, and Sharon helped him secure the new car seat in the car, ensuring it was perfectly fitted for the baby's safety. Back on the road, with the baby now safely nestled in the proper seat, Sharon continued to care for him while Jordan focused on driving. The baby, seemingly content, slept through most of the journey, only stirring occasionally for feedings. Hours later, as they crossed into North Carolina, the weight of their mission pressed heavily on Jordan. The darkness of the night seemed to mirror his turbulent thoughts. He couldn't help but replay the events of the past few days over and over in his mind, each time coming to the same unnerving conclusion. His life as he knew it had irrevocably changed. Finally, they reached the town near Sherry's family home. It was late, but the lights of a 24-hour diner beckoned them in for a much-needed break. Over cups of coffee, Sharon spoke softly. When we meet with Sherry's family, you need to be prepared for any outcome. We don't know their side of the story yet. Jordan nodded, taking a deep breath. I know. I'm just scared of what I might find out. But I need to know for him. He gestured toward the sleeping baby, and for me. The next morning, after a few hours of restless sleep at a local motel, Jordan and Sharon drove to Sherry's family home. The familiar streets brought back a flood of memories, each one tinged with the pain of recent revelations. They parked outside the house, the morning sun casting long shadows on the lawn. Taking a moment to gather his courage, Jordan finally stepped out of the car, his mother at his side. They approached the door, and Jordan rang the bell. His heart pounded in his chest as he waited for someone to answer. After what felt like an eternity, the door opened to reveal Sherry's mother, Mary Ann. Her expression was one of shock, then confusion, as she recognized Jordan. "Jordan? What are you? Why are you here?" Her voice trembled, her eyes flicking to Sharon and the baby. "Mary Ann, we need to talk," Jordan said, his voice firm despite the shaking of his hands. "It's about Sherry. There's something very wrong, and I think you might know something about it." Mary Ann's eyes widened, and she glanced nervously back into the house before stepping outside, closing the door behind her. "Let's talk in the garden," she suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. As they settled on the garden bench, Jordan took a deep breath. "I found a baby at Sherry's grave," he began, deciding it was best to be direct. "A DNA test confirmed he's my son. And then I found this." He handed her the note with Sherry's handwriting. Mary Ann's hands trembled as she read the note, her eyes filling with tears. "Oh, Jordan, I had no idea." "What do you mean? What's going on, Mary Ann? Please, I need to understand." Mary Ann took a deep breath, composing herself. "It's a long story, and part of it isn't mine to tell. But I can start from the beginning. It's time you knew the whole truth." Jordan leaned forward, his heart racing as Mary Ann began to unravel the tangled web of secrets that had turned his world upside down. Each word she spoke opened a new chapter of the story he thought he knew, each revelation more shocking than the last, guiding him closer to the truth about Sherry's disappearance and the mysterious appearance of his son. Jordan's eyes narrowed, his determination undeterred by Gerald's dismissive tone. "I will visit the laundromat," he replied calmly, "but this isn't over, Gerald. There are too many unanswered questions, and I intend to find the answers, with or without your help." As Jordan turned to leave, Thelma's voice, shaky and uncertain, called out to him. "Jordan, wait." Her gaze shifted nervously towards Gerald, then back to Jordan. "Please be careful. This is more complicated than you know." The cryptic warning only fueled Jordan's resolve as he walked back to the car where Sharon was waiting with the baby. The ride to the laundromat was tense, each mile deepening the mystery that entwined their lives with Sherry's family. Upon arriving at the laundromat, Jordan and Sharon entered with the baby, their eyes scanning the busy space for any clue that might lead them closer to the truth. Jordan approached the counter, presenting the laundry stamp card to the attendant. "We found this with a note written on the back. Do you recognize it? Can you tell us about anyone who might have used this service recently?" The attendant examined the card, his brow furrowing. "Yeah, this is one of ours, but I can't just give out information about our customers. Privacy and all." Jordan understood the hesitation but pressed on, explaining the gravity of their situation without revealing too many details. Sensing the earnestness in Jordan's plea, the attendant sighed. "Look, I'm not supposed to do this, but I did see something odd a few weeks back. A woman seemed distressed. She used our services late at night. Kept to herself mostly, but she was definitely hiding something. Dropped off a bunch of baby clothes, too." Sharon and Jordan exchanged a glance, the mention of baby clothes aligning too closely with their situation to be a mere coincidence. "Did she say anything? Do you remember anything else about her?" Jordan asked, his voice tense with anticipation. The attendant nodded slowly. "She mentioned being in a rush, needing to get things cleaned before moving on. Seemed scared. She paid in cash, didn't give a name, but she had a distinctive accent, sounded local, from around here." Armed with this new information, Jordan thanked the attendant and returned to the car, his mind racing with the possibilities. "Mom, she's been here. It has to be Sherry. And she's scared, hiding from something, or someone." Sharon held the baby close, her expression a mix of worry and resolve. "What do you want to do next, Jordan? Going back to Gerald might not be safe now, not after this morning." Jordan started the car, his decision clear. "We need to find Sherry on our own. She's trying to reach out, and it's our job to find her before whatever she's running from catches up to her." Determined, they decided their next step would be to check local accommodations, or any shelters that might have seen someone matching Sherry's description. As they drove, Jordan called local hotels and shelters from his phone, describing Sherry and asking for any information on recent guests matching her description. After several calls, a lead finally came through. A small motel on the outskirts of town reported a woman matching Sherry's description had stayed there briefly, looking nervous and checking in under a pseudonym. With renewed urgency, Jordan drove to the motel, the evening sky casting a deepening blue over the landscape. They arrived to find the motel quiet, the flickering neon sign the only illumination in the growing darkness. Jordan approached the front desk, showing a picture of Sherry to the clerk. "Has this woman been here recently?" The clerk's eyes widened in recognition. "Yeah, she was here a couple of nights ago. Seemed real nervous, like she was looking over her shoulder the whole time." "Did she say where she was going?" Jordan asked, his heart pounding with hope and fear. "Not exactly," the clerk replied, "but she mentioned needing to get to a safe place. Talked about a cabin her family used to go to when she was a kid. It's up north from here, secluded." Grasping at this slim thread, Jordan and Sharon set off once more, heading north towards the cabin that might hold the key to unraveling the mystery surrounding Sherry's disappearance, their child, and the tangled web of lies that seemed to surround the Williams family. As Gerald's threats echoed in the grand foyer, Jordan scrambled to his feet, wincing from the pain but fueled by a surge of adrenaline and fear for Sherry and their child. "You won't get away with this, Gerald. Whatever you're hiding, whatever you've done, it ends today," Jordan spat back, defiance etching his features. Gerald sneered, his veneer of control slipping as he glanced nervously towards the heavy door where Sherry had disappeared. "You have no idea what's at stake here. You're out of your depth, boy." Jordan's gaze hardened. "Then enlighten me, Gerald. Why go through all this? Why hide Sherry, manipulate everything?" Gerald paused, his eyes flickering with a cold calculation. It was never supposed to go this far. But Sherry, she became a liability with her ideas, her plans to expose things that would ruin us. "I did what I had to do to protect my family's legacy." Thelma, now standing near the open doorway of the car, hesitated as Sharon fiercely protected the baby. Sharon's voice was stern and commanding. "Stay back, Thelma. I won't let you harm him." Inside, Jordan seized the moment of distraction. "Where is Sherry now, Gerald? Take me to her." The standoff intensified, and Gerald's resolve wavered as the sound of approaching sirens filled the air. Sharon had discreetly dialed 911 during the initial confrontation. Realizing the situation was spiraling, Gerald's demeanor changed. "Fine. See her if you must. But know this, Jordan. Whatever you think you know, you're not prepared for the truth." Gerald led Jordan through the mansion, down a labyrinth of corridors to a secured room. With a heavy sigh, he unlocked the door, revealing Sherry, pale and visibly shaken but alive. She rushed into Jordan's arms, her relief palpable as she sobbed against him. "Jordan, I knew you'd come for me." Outside, police and emergency vehicles converged on the mansion, their lights casting a stark, revealing glow on the scene. Officers quickly moved to secure the area, detaining Gerald and the guards as they tried to control the chaos. Sherry clung to Jordan, her voice trembling as she explained. "He was going to use our baby to force me into silence permanently. He's involved in things, corrupt, dangerous things. I couldn't let our child grow up in that world." Jordan held her close, his mind reeling from the revelations and the surreal turn their lives had taken. As the police began their investigation, taking statements and securing the mansion, Jordan and Sherry, reunited against all odds, faced the daunting task of rebuilding their lives. In the aftermath, Gerald's manipulations and crimes were exposed, leading to legal battles and the dismantling of the oppressive structures he had built. Jordan and Sherry worked to heal, focusing on their family and the future, determined to leave the darkness of the past behind. Their journey was far from easy, but together, with their child and Sharon's unwavering support, they faced each day with a renewed sense of hope and determination. The truth had been darker and more painful than Jordan had imagined, but it had also set them free. Now they could finally move forward, their bond strengthened by the trials they had overcome and the love that had guided them through the darkest of times. Jordan watched coldly as Gerald was led away, his threats echoing hollowly in the grand foyer now filled with the sound of police radios and murmuring officers. Despite Gerald's menacing words, a deep sense of relief washed over Jordan. He knew the road ahead would be tough, filled with legal battles and Gerald's attempts to wield his influence, but the truth was out now, and he wasn't alone. Sherry, still visibly shaken but safe, came to Jordan's side, her hand finding his as they watched the chaos unfold around them. "It's over. Gerald can't hurt us any more," she whispered, her voice a mixture of disbelief and relief. Jordan squeezed her hand, his resolve firm. "We'll get through whatever comes next together. We have the truth on our side now, and he can't hide from that." As the police began to clear the mansion, taking statements and gathering evidence, Jordan and Sherry were escorted to a quiet room where they could be with their baby and Sharon. The officers assured them that they would be protected, and that an investigation into Gerald's broader network and influence was already underway. Sharon, who had been a stalwart pillar throughout the ordeal, embraced both Jordan and Sherry, tears of relief and joy mingling with a lingering fear of what had almost transpired. "You did it, Jordan. You brought our family back together," she said, her voice choked with emotion. The baby, oblivious to the gravity of the situation, cooed and gurgled in Sherry's arms, bringing a much-needed moment of levity. Jordan watched his family, his heart swelling with love and a renewed sense of purpose. "We're going to make sure he grows up in a world where love and truth aren't overshadowed by hatred and lies," he said, looking down at his son. In the days that followed, the media caught wind of the scandalous events at the Williams mansion. The story of how Gerald Williams had manipulated and controlled his family, faked his daughter's death, and tried to erase his grandson became national news. Public opinion was overwhelmingly on Jordan and Sherry's side, and the community rallied around them, offering support and condemning Gerald's actions. Legal proceedings began swiftly. With the overwhelming evidence collected by the police, including Thelma's damning testimony and the physical evidence Sharon had bravely presented, Gerald faced multiple charges, including kidnapping, fraud, and assault. His attempts to influence the legal process were thwarted by the vigilant efforts of the prosecution, bolstered by the public and media scrutiny. During the trial, Jordan and Sherry stood united, their testimony powerful and poignant. Gerald's lawyers tried to discredit them, to paint Gerald as a protective father who had merely taken extreme measures in a misguided attempt to preserve his family's legacy. However, the jury saw through the charade, influenced by the undeniable facts and the emotional weight of the family's ordeal. When the guilty verdict was delivered, Jordan felt a profound sense of justice. Gerald was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, his assets frozen and redirected to pay for damages and to fund support programs for victims of domestic abuse. As they walked out of the courthouse, Jordan, Sherry, and their son, now free from the shadow Gerald had cast over their lives, were greeted by cameras and reporters. Jordan spoke briefly, not about their suffering, but about their hope for the future and the importance of standing up against manipulation and control. "Today's verdict isn't just a victory for our family. It's a message to anyone who believes they can control and coerce others without consequence," Jordan said, Sherry by his side. "We'll continue to fight, not just for ourselves but for all who suffer in silence." With the legal battles behind them, Jordan and Sherry focused on rebuilding their lives. They worked together on a book detailing their story, aiming to inspire others facing similar struggles and to advocate for stricter laws against domestic coercion and manipulation. As they built their new life, with Sharon and their supportive community, Jordan and Sherry ensured their son knew his history, not just the darkness of his early days, but the strength and love of those who fought for his future. Their family, once broken by deceit and control, was now defined by resilience, love, and a commitment to ensuring that the shadows of the past did not darken their future. In this poignant conclusion, Jordan, Sherry, and their son, baby Jerry, begin their journey back to Virginia, not just geographically, but emotionally and spiritually as well. As they leave the shadows of a harrowing ordeal behind, the light of a new day symbolizes hope and a fresh start for their family. The road ahead is laden with the promise of healing, understanding, and deepening familial bonds. Thelma's transformation from complicity in Gerald's schemes to a remorseful grandmother reflects a significant emotional shift. Her efforts to make amends, though initially met with understandable hesitation from Sherry, lay the groundwork for a potentially reconciled future. This change shows that it is never too late to seek forgiveness and strive to correct past mistakes. Sharon's role as both a protector during the ordeal and a mediator in the aftermath underscores the strength and resilience of familial love. Her practical arrangements for the journey home, coupled with her support in facilitating future visits with Thelma, demonstrate her commitment to fostering healing and reconciliation within the family. The final interaction between Jordan and Sherry, as they pass the cemetery where the tumultuous events began, serves as a powerful reminder of their journey's arc, from despair to hope, from separation to reunion. Holding hands, a simple gesture, symbolizes their renewed commitment to each other and their shared future. As the Williams family drives toward Virginia, their conversation likely revolves around plans for rebuilding their lives, discussions about how to integrate Thelma into Jerry's life responsibly, and the emotional support they will continue to provide each other. Jordan and Sherry's love, tested under the most extreme circumstances, emerges stronger, ready to face the challenges of healing after trauma. This story not only highlights the dark capabilities of human nature, but also celebrates the enduring strength of love, the resilience of the human spirit, and the profound bonds of family. Jordan, Sherry, and their son's journey back home is filled with potential for growth, love, and the peace they have fought so hard to achieve. They know the road ahead will be challenging, but together, they look forward to a future filled with hope and the simple joys of being a family, free from the shadows of the past.